Hello and welcome back to Dystopia Now. I am Kate Willett.
I'm Emil Torres.
And today we are joined by one of my favorite stand-up comedians. I am such a big fan of his work. He's been a writer for Last Week Tonight, for Desus and Miro, and he has a new special that you can watch for free on YouTube called Positive Reinforcement. Welcome to the show, Josh Gondelman.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's so nice to be here with you.
So today we are going to be talking about something that we've briefly mentioned on the show before, but have yet to dive into the full weirdness of the Shrimp Welfare Project. So Emil, can you start by telling us a little bit about what is the Shrimp Welfare Project? Why do we have this?
Yeah, sure. So this started in 2021, and it's a charity that is aligned with the effective altruist community. So I don't know how much of EA you're familiar with, Josh.
But I do know a little bit about them, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like because it's something that on its face, is compelling to me. And then you hear what it actually means in practice, and I'm like, oh, maybe our old school ineffective altruism is effective enough. It was Sam Bankman-Fried was a big EA guy, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so I feel the exact same way that you do. I was part of the EA movement back in the day.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So, I was an active participant. I was, very enthusiastic about EA. And I think from a distance, it does look really compelling. When you dig into the details and you realize that, for example, Sam Bankman-Fried was the great success story within EA of their idea of earn to give, right? So this is the claim that you could do more good in the world. You could maximize your positive influence in the world more generally if you pursue lucrative careers, right? Rather than like going and working for a nonprofit focused on climate issues or animal welfare, et cetera. No, actually go and get a job on Wall Street, or for what Will McCaskill, one of the co-founders of EA, describes as an immoral organization, like a petrochemical company, and make a lot of money and then donate that money to charity. And so, from a distance, like the idea that we ought to be altruistic, and we should try to be altruistic in the most effective way. That sounds great. And I am all for that. Right?
Sam.
Yeah.
I'm not against those principles of doing good for other people and doing it in a way where there is a significant impact. I'm not, I can't take a stand against either of those premises.
I mean, I think this is, from what I know, the limited amount I know about the Shrimp Welfare Project so far, it's kind of a good case study because nothing about it really seems so bad on the surface. In fact, it seems like a pretty good thing. Like, I know I care about animal welfare a lot. I have to be honest, I'm not super focused on shrimp for the most part, but, I donate to cat rescues, and it's a cause I care about in general. So I guess, can we just start by doing kind of a basic overview about what this shrimp welfare situation is and why it might be more than meets the eye?
Yeah, that's great. So maybe we'll focus on the question of what it is initially, and maybe even motivating some arguments in favor of the shrimp welfare project.
Because I understand what shrimp are.
Yeah.
I understand what welfare is. The idea of a project is not alien to me, but those three words together, I'm like really having trouble imagining what that is.
Yeah. So it's built on the claim that shrimp, despite having, compared to compared to human beings, a quite rudimentary nervous system, nonetheless is probably capable of experiencing pain. So shrimp are probably sentient to some extent, or they are capable of having conscious experiences, right? And what philosophers typically mean by consciousness, well, there's a whole bunch of different definitions, but
in the case of shrimp,
a core idea is that there is something it is like to be that thing. Right. So like rocks, it doesn't seem like there's anything it's like to be a rock. Hence, we assume that they're not conscious, but maybe there is something it's like to be a dog or a cat or perhaps a shrimp. And so if shrimp are capable of having conscious experiences, then that qualifies them for, to use another like jargony term, moral patiency. Right.
Okay.
So moral patience are the kinds of things that we should include within our circles of moral concern. And if something is inside our circle of moral concern, then we ought to consider it when morally deliberating about how to act. So again, rocks are outside our circles of moral concern. Nobody cares if somebody kicks a rock over a cliff as long as there's nobody below.
I mean,
right?
some people care. It's like a geologist probably cares,
Oh no, my rock! I was saving that for science.
Okay, can I tell you just this is a very quick tangent?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So my boyfriend's father is a geologist and was a geology professor. And one of the classes he taught at university was a course on crystals from a geologist perspective. But on the first day of class, it's like full of white women who have signed up to learn the metaphysical properties of crystals.
Sure.
Everyone dropped. So I'm just saying, some people do care about rocks. It's really important to a certain kind of lady. Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay, fair enough. That's a perfectly reasonable qualification. The point I'm trying to make is to contrast rocks, the way most of us think of rocks, as opposed to like kittens, right?
Yes,
if you kick a kitten over a cliff. Yeah.
You're a sociopath. You're a sociopath if you do that to a kitten. Whereas if you do it to a rock, it's like, maybe it's not ideal, but nobody would call you a sociopath. Yeah,
maybe it's kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe it's cool to kick a rock off a cliff. I think it might be cool if there's nobody under there. Yeah. If it's just going to splash into a river or something, that's nice.
Yeah, and so
you can't skip a kitten across a pond.
No way. And I've tried. I have not tried.
I think the fur would probably interfere with that. So maybe you need to shave it first.
My cats love water. They go swimming in the bathtub. I turn it into a little swimming pool for them with like lukewarm water, and they jump in and they swim around. And it's like a summer day for them. It's very odd. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned that. That's so weird.
They're very strange little guys. But anyway, you never meet a rock with that kind of personality.
With that kind of verve. No way. But maybe a shrimp is what I'm learning. You might find a shrimp that has hobbies.
Yeah.
So if shrimp are conscious, then maybe they should be included in our circles of moral concern, which means we should care about them. And there are, I think annually it's something like 450 billion shrimp that are farmed, right?
Whoa.
And there's I read somewhere that maybe there's an even larger number that are caught in the wild, right? But the Shrimp Welfare Project is mostly focused on farmed shrimp, which are treated pretty badly, which is not a big surprise. Factory farming is like, arguably one of the great moral crimes of our
and it's not
era.
Done gently or not, it's not done with a lot of concern for the feelings of even animals that are capable of yelling at us. Even the ones that can be like, hey, knock it off. We don't do a great job with that. And so shrimp the silent protest at the most, I can imagine it being real gnarly.
I mean, my friends, like, one of my friends in California has become she started, this is kind of a complicated story, but I'll tell it fast. She started dating a man who owns a pig farm. And Michelle, my friend, basically like got really into the pigs. And the pigs are as nice as dogs. Like they're very loving. They're like cuddly little guys. They can be completely kept as pets in the same way that a dog or cat does. And on this farm that they live on, they have like a fully, free range life and stuff. And some of them are used for food, but they try to, be like really conscious of having them have a good life. But from that, there's also like a lot of pigs on the farm that are just pigs. And from that, I just really have, I think, grown even more hatred of factory farming because like these guys are just, they're cuddly, they're smart, they're super sweet. And it makes sense to me that effective altruists are concerned with factory farming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple things come to mind. One is that, there's a sense in which it's like kind of historical accident that pigs aren't seen as pets the way we see cats and dogs,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if every time you ate a burger, someone said like, it's just the way it works. It's really complicated. I can't explain to you now, but there's a kitten that's going to get suffocated.
Oh
You're
God.
like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that's absolutely
There
terrible.
was, when I was like probably a teenager, maybe a tween, someone in my neighborhood would occasionally walk a pet pig past our house. And we didn't live in like farm country. We lived in like a fairly dense suburb by suburb standards. And my mom would go, "There's a pig outside." And my dad would go, "No, there isn't." And just, this was my first experience with gaslighting.
Yeah.
And he didn't mean it on purpose. He was just like, "Why would there be a pig outside?" And she's like, "I'm looking at a pig, I swear it."
That's adorable.
Yeah, it was really cute. Big pot-bellied pig.
But yeah, I mean, pigs like runts of the litter are oftentimes disposed of in factory farms through a process called pig thumping. It's an
Ew.
actual thing. You could find basically where the workers just throw the pig repeatedly on the ground until it
That's
dies.
fucking horrible.
Chickens are oftentimes killed through a process called live shackled, the live shackled slaughter method.
Oof.
And this involves them getting clamped upside down by their legs, these metal clamps, which oftentimes break their legs, and then they're dipped in an electrified bath of water to stun them.
Oh my
Then they
God.
have their throats slit, and then they're thrown into boiling water. So it's really, really horrific.
That's awful. I'm gonna become a vegan after this episode. Yeah.
And so the situation with shrimp is like not that different. Oftentimes they're kept in really like high density containers, like there's a whole bunch of them. And there's some evidence that this increases stress levels as measured by neurochemicals like serotonin, for example, which modulate the experience of the response to stress and pain in these little decapods, is what they're called. And also, there's this process which is called eye stalk ablation. So basically, the shrimp have these little stalks at the end of which are their eyes. And in the stalks are these basically glands. They're neurosecretory complexes that send out a hormone. So like in the wild, there's breeding and non-breeding seasons, right? And so this neurosecretory complex sends out these hormones to regulate the development of gonads like ovaries, right? So it's literally called gonad inhibitory hormone, right? And so the idea is that if you destroy the eye, so oftentimes this will be done with like a slit through the eye. I know this is like really, really awful and gross.
Well, it's good to understand why they care about shrimp welfare. I feel like
Exactly,
we should give it a fair due, you know?
Yeah. I feel like this episode, the previous one that we recorded, were both like kind of gruesome because we talked about the death of the OpenAI whistleblower, and that also involved lots of references to blood and stuff. So anyways, they cut the eye and then they basically like squeeze out or crush the gland in there. So that makes the female shrimps more fertile. So they'll reproduce faster.
If they can't see, they'll reproduce faster. So the shrimp have like like the women get beer goggles. They're willing to like lower their standards, basically.
So I'm not sure that's like a scientifically valid explanation. But yeah, by destroying that eye stalk, then they reproduce more. So there's a bottom line. These farmers want to produce as much shrimp as possible. So since the 1970s, they've been utilizing this particular method to increase the rate of reproduction among shrimp. So these are some of the reasons that the Shrimp Welfare Project was started. And I at first glance, the whole effort, this particular philanthropic, as it were, project, it does sound like like silly, and I think there are some reasons to think it is kind of silly. But when you dig into the details, it does lead at least me to be a bit more sympathetic with the cause. I mean, the Shrimp Welfare Project was featured on The Daily Show. There was a segment where I'm forgetting his
Ronnie
name.
Chang, I think. Yeah.
Ronnie Chang, exactly. Yeah. Interviewed one of the co-founders of the movement, and even by the end, it seemed like Ronnie Chang was a bit more open to the idea of the Shrimp Welfare Project.
I think one thing that really shocked Ronnie Chang on that also shocked me, is that the Shrimp Welfare Project, they still kill the shrimp. They're not even saving their lives. The shrimp still are murdered, which I'm like, what the fuck kind of welfare system is it where they murder you at the end?
That's exactly right. So right now they are advocating for what they describe as a more humane way of slaughtering the shrimp, which involves basically electrocuting them. It's not the case that they're advocating, at least right now, for people to consume less shrimp or for these farms to shut down. My personal guess is that there's probably strategic reasons that are left unsaid for why they aren't advocating that. My guess is that their longer term goal is to actually get the number of shrimp that are farmed to be reduced, right? But in the meantime, they understand that if they connect their project, if they say, okay, look, we're, stage one is advocating for this alternative method of killing the shrimp. Stage two is that we shut down all of these farms. They're probably going to have fewer opportunities to actually work with the farmers, which they're doing around the world.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're lib incrementalists. Yeah.
And so is this a target in this way, right, of like effective altruism? Because one of the tenets of it, right, is doing good that goes the furthest and helps the most people, or like morally considered entities. So if they're like, look, if we can stop shrimp from being tortured, that's 450 million or billion, you said 450 billion entities that we're reducing the suffering towards. That's some effective altruism right there.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. I mean, this sort of gets at one of my criticisms of the Shrimp Welfare Project, which has to do with with the effective altruist movement's very quantitative way of approaching ethics. I mean, there really is a mathematics to morality. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've said before that essentially what they do is reduce all of ethics to a branch of economics, right? It's really just about number crunching. And if there's some intervention that isn't easily quantifiable, then it's not even considered, right? Yeah. So there are literally people in the global south. There's a guy who I've known now for several years named Anthony Kalulu, and he runs a grassroots organization called the Uganda Farming Community. I think that's the name. And he wrote this really fantastic, insightful, trenchant critique of EA, where he basically said that traditional philanthropy is very bad, and oftentimes ignores the importance. It neglects the importance of funding grassroots organizations, right? People who have ground level, firsthand knowledge based on their lived experience of the root causes of the cycles of poverty in their regions. But EA, he claimed, is even worse, precisely because of their quantitative metrics. So if they say, okay, yeah, we're going to give like $45 million to the Uganda farming community in order to build what Anthony Kalulu hopes, which is to construct a food processing center in this very poor region of Uganda, EA is going to say, how many lives has that saved? Give me like an exact number. How many people has it saved? Quantify the ways it's improved individuals' life. Well, for a project like a food processing plant, it's going to take years and decades to see the results, and sometimes the results are just not easily quantifiable. Right? There are other interventions that might focus on like community building. That also is not quantifiable and therefore is completely excluded from the EA list of approved charities to donate to.
Yeah, like if from an EA perspective, okay, if you're trying to, all right, let me put it this way. You're trying to donate to one of two things. The two causes that you're attracted to is a tutoring program for disadvantaged kids or shrimp welfare. The shrimp welfare is the no-brainer for the effective altruist because there's no way that you can really quantify how much difference tutoring makes. But of course, like for me, I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I do want shrimp to be, not hurt, and I would consider like even eliminating my consumption of shrimp. But I mean, like human kids have some, I don't know, that they like. I have natural empathy, I guess, for human children. Yeah,
but it's tough, right? Because if you're saving or at least improving 450 billion shrimp lives, there's no way you can compete with that on a human level because there's not even that many humans.
Yeah,
100%.
Exactly. So that is exactly that is precisely the point that I was getting at. When when ethics becomes a numbers game, then and you're quantifying like well-being, suffering, etc., and multiplying that number by the total number of individuals within a population, then you end up in a situation exactly like Kate is describing, where shrimp win. Even if shrimp have a very small capacity to experience suffering, that suffering, even if it's quite minuscule, adds up, right? So if you're talking about 450 billion shrimp, then maybe the total amount of suffering is greater than the total amount of suffering of like a very large number, like maybe 1 million kids who don't have a tutor.
I mean, let's even compare apples to apples here. If you're trying to decide between shrimp welfare and kitten welfare, almost every person that we know is going to choose to donate to the kitten rescue. But for an EA, that's a very stupid decision to prioritize the kittens because there's just not as many of them, as Josh was noting.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so I think this is a problem. I mean, you mentioned like, let's compare apples to apples. There is I think, even more important question, which concerns whether or not it's possible to make any such comparisons at all, right? Because as soon as you're talking about suffering as this quantifiable phenomenon, right, then you have a currency across which you could say, well, you've got 450 billion shrimp, they suffer only this much, add it up. Do the math, like an economist, and you'll find that might be worse than, let's say, a single individual human being being tortured for a week. You could sort of do that math. I mean, this is also why long-termism wins every time, right? Because long-termism is that branch of EA that focuses on the far future and says, look, if we remain on Earth for the next billion years, at which point the oceans will begin to boil as the sun's luminosity increases as it becomes a red giant. But if at some point we spread beyond Earth and then colonize our galaxy and the local cluster, the Virgo supercluster, bigger and bigger cosmological structures, then the future human population could be absolutely enormous. And so if you are an EA who's committed to improving the lives of the greatest number of people possible, and if most people who could exist will exist in the far future, millions, billions, or trillions of years from now, maybe somewhere very far from our solar system, then you should be focused on them rather than on present people. Or rather, you should focus on present people only insofar as doing that positively influences the far future, because it's just a numbers game. There's so many more people in the future. And so just to take a step back real fast, to explain how long-termism fits in with the shrimp welfare project, they are in tension, right? So it's the same underlying logic, but there is a tension because long-termism says that even if there are like 1 trillion shrimp, there are lots more than 1 trillion future people, right? There's like hundreds and hundreds of trillions of future people. So the future wins every time, except that there's this.
But aren't there so many more future shrimp?
There you go. You're into the logic. Yeah.
I mean, if there's 450 billion shrimp now, by the time we're out in space, the planet's going to be mostly shrimp, is my understanding.
Yeah. The shrimp natalists are going to get their way on this. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that
Simone
thought.
and Malcolm Collins for shrimp. There's like little trad wife shrimp that are just popping out.
Kate, the fact that you
babies.
know their names offhand makes me want to throw your computer in a lake.
Simone and Malcolm Collins, we did a whole episode on these freaks. They are crazy. Yeah.
We know them well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Much to our embarrassment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the long-termists would say that the future is digital. It's not biological. And so ultimately, I mean, to be honest, there's a few things to say here. One is in Will MacAskill. So I mentioned MacAskill earlier as the co-founder of EA.
Mm-hmm.
He's also one of the leading long-termists, right? So within EA, there are different cause areas. There's like animal welfare, there's global poverty, and then there's long-termism. And initially, at least this is the official narrative, EA started off focusing on alleviating global poverty. And then it has pivoted towards more long-termist causes because they realize that the future wins every time. No matter how many animals are factory farmed, et cetera, that number pales in comparison to the future people. I mean, literally the estimate is 10 to the 58, one followed by 58 zeros. That's how many, that's like
how many people will ever exist?
Yes, within the accessible universe. Yeah, so the future is digital. And in fact, in Will MacAskill's book, What We Owe the Future, published in 2022, which got a lot of attention, MacAskill was even on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah and
Ezra Klein's podcast, of course.
Ezra Klein's, yeah, of course. He argues that our systematic destruction of the biosphere might be net positive, because the destruction of biodiversity means that there are fewer wild animals to suffer, right? So the total amount of suffering might actually be declining as a result of us just obliterating the natural world, polluting the oceans, injecting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, raising forests, decimating ecosystems.
This is a wild, because this is also, you can just say anything about the long-term future, right?
Yeah.
And say that you're doing it for that sake at this point.
Exactly.
If you're saying it's great to drive species extinct because their descendants will never suffer, that's then at that point, and then saying like, oh, we don't need to worry about animal suffering now or global poverty because of all the people that will exist in the future. At that point, you're not beholden to like any rules or logic that governs how people live on Earth now.
Just like in our capitalist system, if there's a way to maximize profit, if that means like polluting an ocean, polluting a river, well, if you can get away with it, you do it, right? Because there's a bottom line, and all that matters is the bottom line. And these effective altruists, including the long-termists, are hugely influenced by utilitarianism, which is an ethical theory that emerged historically concomitantly with industrial capitalism. I don't think that's a coincidence, because the mentality is very similar.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. When, the future, I mean, this is one of the I think the dangers of EA, and especially long-termism, is that the future considerations can justify anything, right? The future is a utopian world, a heaven in the literal heavens, out among the stars, full of literally astronomical amounts of quote unquote value, realized by all of those future people, all these digital beings that are existing throughout the universe. And so what exactly is off the table for realizing that? If the ends can justify the means, and the ends are a literal utopia, what's off the table?
I mean, and it's not just that anything can be justified, although that's definitely true. There is one thing that is easier to justify than anything else, and that is to give the richest tech billionaires all of the money. Because, if you look at, who is enabled to, maybe make some progress on our lives in space, that's basically just, two guys, like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, maybe they'll, be 5 more or something like that. But like the people that made this up are very self-serving.
And it also means, right? Like if we're talking about this hypothetical future where humans have populated the galaxies to beyond, like exponential growth of the human race out into space, that just means like we might as well just blow up Earth with nuclear weapons so that 1 trillion people in 1 billion years never frown. You know what I mean?
And stuff like that has been suggested.
Yeah, totally. And it's like that, but it's at this point, right, where it's so interesting to hear that this is a philosophy because it feels like such a like Naomi Klein doppelganger perversion of like caring for the environment, because you go like, well, we could live however now, but that ruins the environment for like obviously people who live in certain areas or at certain income levels now, but then everybody further down the line. And so this is like a version of that is fully perverse and saying like, actually, nothing now matters because we just have to get to that utopian future where that's when we start doing good for everybody.
Exactly, yeah.
I want to note something that I just learned today. And it's regarding the hypocrisy of these people, these effective altruists, these rationalists, because, they very much like to present themselves as spending all of their time and money on the thing that they have concluded is the most effective. If it's shrimp welfare, it's shrimp welfare. I'm not giving money to kids who have cancer because it would be morally incorrect to do so. And in fact, I'm not spending a second fighting for healthcare for everyone because, that's just not mathematically right.
I'm all in on shrimp.
But do you know what they were doing this weekend? Do you know what like a giant percent of these dudes were doing this weekend? They were attending Ayala's SlutCon. So, SlutCon.
I don't know what that is.
I'll tell you. So, SlutCon is, the like rationalist. She's a rationalist. She's a sex researcher and sex worker named Ayala, and she's I think done she got really famous when she published some statistic of her year where she had sex with 3 times more people than she has taken showers or something like that. And she's a big thinker in the rationalist community as well. And she hosted...
And the rationalist community, by the way, overlaps very significantly with the effective altruist community.
Eliezer Yudkowsky is one of the biggest people in the rationalist community. And to me, that example that Emil told me about of his ethics, where basically if you have a choice between everybody having one speck of dust in their eye or torturing one person forever, the clear choice is to torture one person forever. Like he's
for 50 years.
So he's pro. He read The Ones Who Walked Away from Omelas and was like, this is how we got to structure our society. We need an Omelas child. Okay, I have it on good intel that this weekend he was attending SlutCon. Okay,
look, I'm not going to come on this podcast and be anti-slut or anti-shrimp, but I will say all of these positions they feel like real contortions into the position that they wanted to be in to start, right? Like to say that. To say that we torture one person instead of everyone having a speck of dust in their eye, you go, oh, you're not having ideas, you're playing logic games. You're playing with riddles, you know what I mean? Not with like real people's lives.
I think that is really insightful. And I could, you're very welcome.
First time for everything.
I got in a friendly debate with a colleague the other day, and at the end, he said, I think you're right. And I was like, it's so rare that someone...
That's a nice feeling.
I actually convinced someone. So I patted myself on the back for a brief
Deserved.
moment. But yeah, I mean, one of the arguments that I've made in the past about long-termism, and again, the Shrimp Welfare Project is not part of long-termism.
Okay.
It's just CA.
It's more traditional EA, right?
Yeah.
We're helping shrimp now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there is this divide in the community, and a growing number of EAs are now long-termists, right? And so they're like, the future is basically all that matters, the long-term future of quote unquote humanity, by which they mean our post-human digital descendants. And then there's some other EAs who have resisted that trend. And so the Shrimp Welfare Project would be an example of that. But ultimately, what I was going to say is long-termism, one of the arguments I've made about it, about why it's problematic, is that it tells wealthy white people, let's say, wealthy white people in the global north exactly what they want to hear. It tells billionaires exactly what they want to hear. Not only are you morally excused from helping the poor, but you're a morally better person. You're a superior person for focusing instead on long-termist issues like space colonization, building artificial general intelligence, and so on. Mitigating quote unquote existential risks, which is basically defined as anything that prevents us from creating this techno-utopian world among the stars. Another way to put that is there is a long series of excuses that wealthy people in the global north have tried to articulate to excuse themselves from not caring about poor people. And this is just another one.
Yeah.
Right? Because the future is so big, well, at least it could and it should be so big that everything else, global poverty, there are like, 730 million people in extreme poverty, almost 1 billion people in extreme poverty. Like that's, the long terms would say that is very bad in absolute terms.
Yeah.
In relative terms, the failure to realize this quote unquote, I'm quoting one of the leading figures, vast and glorious future, the disvalue of never realizing it is so much greater, utterly dwarfs the suffering of 700, let's say 1 billion people in extreme poverty.
Yeah.
So it could be seen as a kind of self-serving line of reasoning. Here's what we want to do. I mean, I think this is one reason that Elon Musk has described long-termism as, quote, a close match for my philosophy, because he stumbled upon it, probably sometime like in the early, like very early 2010s, and thought like, oh, this tells me that I'm an awesome person.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I might be one of the best, like morally best people who ever existed if I'm the one who oversees the creation of artificial general intelligence, godlike AI, and I'm the one who gets us to Mars, which is the stepping stone to the rest of the galaxy. And so I am this like, someday, like a trillion years from now, there will be these digital, post-humans living in computer simulations. So they'll crack open their, cosmic history textbook, and first paragraph of chapter 1 will say this guy, this extraordinary mythical messianic figure named Elon Musk, he was the catalyst that made all of this possible. So I think Elon Musk understands his role in those sort of grandiose but very long-termist terms.
I want to, just for a moment here, bring us back to SlutCon.
Sure, sorry. I'm sorry. I took us away from SlutCon, I didn't realize you weren't ready to leave.
I just want to illustrate something to back up the point that both of you are making about how this shit is so self-serving, okay? So this is a sexually themed convention, and specifically the way Ella describes it. But let me just say, I think a valuable piece of context here is that tickets to the event were like $3,000. Okay, so people were willing to spend very big to go to this conference. Like, however, they want to tell me that my, $25 a month to DSA is completely wasted because it's ineffective. But this is specifically a sex convention. It's for men. It's not. It is. Ayala says, I'm horny and I would like more men to inspire me in the desire to have sex with them. I have to go through elaborate mating rituals, throwing orgies, escorting in order to get laid. I want this to be simpler. I want to be seduced. I empathize with the male plight. Women have it tough being the selectors, but men arguably have it tougher trying to get selected. We evolved in a world without feminism, and I am immensely grateful for feminism, but it nevertheless ups the difficulty specialty for male seduction. So they're basically going to like an EA rationalist theme pickup artist convention with a little bit of like Evo Psych eugenics thrown in. And they've decided, okay, for some reason, this is like a morally and financially valuable use of my time. But you can't build the community center. Fuck you if you like want to give some money to tutoring children. Now, I'm not against like taking a vacation or, even like buying sex products or education, like whatever, like put your money. I mean, a dildo, I don't know, whatever you like to do. I'm not here to shame you, but it's like, I mean, it's just it is just like anything that they feel like spending their own personal money on that is satisfying to them, whether that's like a jacuzzi or like an Evo Psych pickup artist convention, that's fine. But like when, I'm a little democratic socialist who wants to make a little campaign donation to Zoran, oh, that's really bad. That's ineffective,
And there's this idea, I think what you hit on, Kate, of like whatever they want to do, because this is like, it's almost a tautology, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, because I'm wealthy and I'm committed to this long-termist movement, that means whatever is good for me is good for the movement because I'm for the movement.
Yeah.
And so like it truly does justify anything because Elon Musk going like, well, I've got to go to SlutCon. Not that he was there personally, but like
No.
if he said that, like this is actually for the future because like the happier and more sexually fulfilled I am, the more money I make and the better I can do for the trillions of NFTs that have replaced the human race in the year 7 billion.
Yeah, and it's much darker than that too. I think like just really quick, I have wondered so many times while seeing these people who are effective altruists, famously rationalists, a specific journalist named Kelsey Piper comes to mind. And the way that she has talked about Gaza for the past couple of years has been wildly callous. And I'm like, you guys spend all day talking about how everyone needs to have more babies so that we can have, more value and the long-termist future or whatever. But like, there's this situation where all of these actual living babies are being hurt or killed, and like we can save the babies. We can all put our energy and money towards, ending this terrible situation. But for the EA or the rationalist, it's not worth it because people in Gaza live in a part of the world where, the EAs don't think that like their life is going to have, the ability to like make these exponential ripples because they're not going to like start a company that will have, $1 billion in funding. And it's just like, it's just so eugenicist and like genocidal so fast.
I mean, it feels like the shift into long-termism as like a philosophy feels to me like it is giving the green light to people within this movement who have the most impulse towards, or the least impulse towards actual doing good and the most impulse towards the kind of like flattering of people who are already wealthy and successful by those metrics.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've written before, by the way, going back to the genocide issue, that one should be suspicious of anybody who is obsessed with preventing omnicide, the murder of everyone, but who doesn't give a shit about genocide.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right. And there are a bunch of people in the long-termist community who have, let me actually rephrase that. I can't think of any prominent members, or even like lower down, some lower echelon in the EA hierarchy who have said anything about the genocide in Gaza, and yet they continue to scream about existential risk and related issues. Oh, if everybody dies, that's going to be absolutely terrible because that forecloses the realization of this utopian future. And yet they can't muster up enough empathy just to even just tweet, to just, I feel like that's the very least that one could do is just express
to
solidarity.
to make your voice heard. In solidarity.
I mean, even if you're not like super, informed about the politics, you would think that if your biggest thing is that you don't want people to die, and you see any situation really where a lot of people are dying, you're like, well, that's very sad. Maybe I need to learn more about this, but this sure is awful. And it's interesting, they really don't seem to think so. And I don't know, like with this shrimp welfare thing, okay, like there's nothing against shrimp welfare. Like I think it sounds better to not hurt the shrimp, but like how do you get to the point in your mind where I was going to say that you can feel empathy for shrimp, but not for children who are being hurt. But I guess it's like not feeling empathy at all. Like, I guess the feelings are not part of it whatsoever.
And I will say, I don't know any, coming at it from the other direction, anyone who is like a hardline, sincere vegan or person who eats, only a plant-based diet that does not have a lot of empathy for the people of Palestine and their families. You know what I mean? Like, so to come at it from that way, you go, oh, if you come at it from shrimp shouldn't suffer, I also think people shouldn't suffer. But going in the opposite direction from effective altruism towards shrimp, you just kind of like, it skips over a lot of potential people to care about.
Right, and I think you make a good point there, because there already is a political movement, a long-standing political movement for, for animal rights and for veganism. And it's interesting that instead of becoming advocates for veganism or joining with long-standing animal rights organizations, these people are like, oh, we need our own thing. It's like we have to be too clever by half. We can't work with any of the people who've been working on this issue for generations in some cases.
A lot of individuals, and including activists in the animal rights space, have argued that effective altruism has made their work more difficult.
Why? Why is that? I'm so curious.
Because of the quantitative metrics, right? So some of the interventions that are advocated by certain activists are not proven to be measurably better, right? There's no way of showing that you get the biggest bang for your buck. If there's no way to show that that's the case, then that intervention is disqualified from even being considered, right? It's not commensurate or compatible with the metrics, and therefore will not end up on a list of charities you ought to give to. There was a good book co-edited by my good friend Alice Crary, which is titled "The Good It Promises, the Harm It Does." And so it's an edited volume, and there's at least one chapter written by an animal rights activist where she goes into detail. So that's a good resource if people are curious to know why animal advocates are complaining about EA. And another thing I wanted to mention, I suspect that some listeners might be a little skeptical about something that Josh said earlier, which is that it seems like long-termists, maybe in particular, but maybe perhaps EAs in general, kind of start off with their conclusion and then figure out how they can get the data, the arguments, et cetera, to fit their preferred conclusion. But I don't think that's an exaggeration. And I'll give two examples of how thinking about morality as just a mathematical, arithmetical equation can lead one to get the desired results, whatever they are, just by wiggling the numbers a little bit. So one example is Wytham Abbey. This is a palatial estate that the Center for Effective Altruism, technically Effective Ventures, I think that's the umbrella organization, bought for, and I want to say it was 12 or 15 million pounds. I can't remember. It's basically this castle in just outside of Oxford, where the Center for Effective Altruism is based. So they, on the one hand, like they're advocating for members to give away at least 10% of their income, but you get a big pat on the back if you give away basically all of your disposable income and you live quite basically the poverty level, which some people in EA have done. And then the center goes out and buys a castle. And when they were confronted about this, they basically nobody in the effective altruism community knew about it until I tweeted about it. Because at the time, especially at the time, a lot of people at EA followed me because I was very critical of it.
I did not know that you broke the castle story. Yeah.
It was originally mentioned in a New Yorker article about McCaskill, but nobody noticed it.
More like McCastle.
There we go. Boom.
Yeah.
Nicely done. And so basically they justified it by saying, so this is before FTX collapsed and Sam Bankman-Fried ended up in prison, et cetera. And they basically justified it by saying, look, if there's even a small probability that the castle attracts the next Sam Bankman-Fried, then it will absolutely have been worth it, right? So you can get the numbers to work. And the second example is, I think, even more atrocious than that. There was an article in Time magazine by a journalist named Charlotte Alter.
Mm-hmm. And I know Charlotte.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. I've been in touch with her a bit, but I wouldn't say that I know her, but I love her writing.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, so she broke this story of widespread sexual harassment within the rationalist, by that I mean rationalist/EA community in the San Francisco Bay Area. And one of the accounts was that women were being coerced into having sexual relations, oftentimes with older men in the rationalist EA community, because those older men were saying, look, what I'm doing is ensuring that we create godlike AI. Maybe that this is a topic that many of them work on, to ensuring that it is controllable. If you have controllable AGI or superintelligence, then utopia is more or less guaranteed. Right. So what I'm doing is extremely important, right? I mean, cosmically important. And then they'd say, what I need to be able to do my work as efficiently and optimally as possible is to be satisfied. And so the women were basically like, if they refused, there was this implication that they're in some way like interfering with the realization of utopia.
Man.
And so it's like
they were calling existentialist blue balls.
Yeah. I mean, man, this all gives the SlutCon situation a way darker feel to it, I would say.
And Kate, this is stuff that you wouldn't believe this about San Francisco. You're shaking your head saying, not the rationalist communities I've seen there.
I mean, yeah, it is just interesting because it's like, you think about who a lot of these men are, and I'll be ungenerous here, but also I think accurate. A lot of them have kind of incel vibes to them, are very low empathy. I think sometimes that is erroneously conflated with neurodivergence, but I don't think it's neurodivergence. I think it's like being a bad person, because there's plenty of neurodivergent people who are very empathetic and very moral. And
certainly,
these guys, I think, they just don't really care about people who don't look like them, and they resent women, and they're like, okay, let's build an entire philosophy around this.
Yeah.
I
think Greta Thunberg is a good example.
Yeah.
Someone who's neurodivergent, she has autism, and yet also she cares tremendously about.
And she's so principled. Yeah.
So principled, yeah. I mean, this came up recently when I was chatting with a journalist who was saying, yeah, I think, the journalist said to me, I think that maybe the kind of utilitarian, this quantitative approach to thinking about ethics might have something to do with like autism, being more prevalent in Silicon Valley circles. And it's like, I don't know. Greta Thunberg, she's, at the time I spoke to a journalist, she was on a flotilla to Palestine. So yeah, I don't know.
I also think that like there is, like you said, previously, that like it is kind of a smudging of the numbers to make this work.
Yes.
I think even if you are a person who is very focused on numerical impact, that does not mean that you lack the capacity to understand that this kind of mathematics is not necessarily what it claims to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a guy, I cannot remember his name, despite trying to remember his name over the past few months. But the reason I wanted to remember him is because he posted this really amusing article on his personal blog, which was, I think, pretty good analytic philosophy. Like, it was fairly well done, where he jokingly made the case that from a long-termist, in particular long-termist perspective, an all-out thermonuclear war in the near term would be the best thing, right? Because, like, yes, a lot of people would die, but also humanity might learn its lesson. Any other kind of catastrophe that could result in an existential catastrophe whereby we never realize the utopian future, the risks of those sorts of things would actually decline after a thermonuclear war that kills, let's say, like 5 billion people. And it's like, yeah, you can get the numbers to work. That makes sense. That is a perfectly good argument from the long-termist perspective in favor of near-term thermonuclear conflict, right? So that's the problem with it, is the numbers, like, where do the numbers come from? The equation is only as good as the numbers you put in. Like, everybody knows the phrase garbage in, garbage out, right? So where do you get those numbers in the first place? A lot of times they're just fudge. They're just, like, kind of made up.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, I guess, getting back to the Shrimp Welfare Project, it's not totally dissimilar, because, like, we don't have any good sense of the extent to which shrimp are actually conscious, the extent to which they can really feel pain. We don't even know if they can feel pain. We don't know what kind of pain it is. And maybe kind of pain is important, right? Maybe there are kinds of pain that human children can experience that shrimp just never can. You could say, like, imagine that you have a choice between the rest of your life, you're dealing with a hangnail, right? And it's a very annoying. And every day you've just got this, like, little pinch, by your fingernail. It's uncomfortable. In a forced choice situation, would you go with having a hangnail for the rest of your life, or alternatively, being horrifically tortured for, let's say, 1 month, and then that's it, right? And so I would say that without hesitation, I would take the hangnail situation. Like, there's no amount of hangnail suffering that could ever, in my opinion, exceed, like, truly brutal, horrendous torture, even for, like, let's say, a few days.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of the worst thing,
even
like
for an hour, 15 minutes, you would be traumatized by it for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Think of a minute.
Yeah, I mean, like,
of, like, electric shock torture,
or even just, like, childbirth. Like, people's, like, human beings have, not to be, like, Evo psych person, but, like, human beings have evolved to, like, not be able to accurately remember childbirth, because, like, the torture of that would mean that if people remembered it accurately, that humanity would not continue, Yeah.
So the point is, like, maybe there are certain kind of, there are certain thresholds. There are maybe discontinuities in kinds of suffering, such that there's no amount of shrimp suffering that could ever exceed, let's say, like, one child, a 10-year-old being crushed under a building and then dying 10 days later after, sitting there alone in the rubble in Gaza. And so ultimately, the reason I mention this is one of my criticisms of the Shrimp Welfare Project has to do with the use of moral mathematics to prioritize things, right? It's like the genocide in Gaza, like, I don't know, it's just not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. There's only 2 million people in Gaza. We're talking about 450 billion shrimp every year, right? And so it's that sort of, like, the use of this economic way of thinking about ethics that can lead one to prioritize shrimp welfare over, like, speaking out in solidarity, or perhaps even doing more to help the victims of genocide in Gaza. Does that make sense, that discontinuity? The hangnail versus torture case, I feel like is a fairly clear way of getting at this.
Oh, I was just going to say, it completely makes sense to me. Yeah.
And the fact that it is presented also, right, as, like, a binary makes it so convenient for the people that don't want to maybe compromise their standing in certain circles by speaking out against certain things, right? Like, not to be too oblique about it, but it's like, I think if you're going, well, I've got to put all my eggs in the shrimp basket, that's from Red Lobster. That is then you're exempt from having to care about other things. And if you are instead someone who thinks like many crises are worth our attention, then you are no longer you don't get the hall pass, right, to like not care about genocide, because you're like, oh, I can want shrimp not to suffer, and I can also see the urgent humanitarian crisis of murder happening every day that could be stopped.
And it's a good point because it's like, it's cowardice too, right? Because it's like, okay, you're a guy that's a fanatic about shrimp welfare. Okay, what's the worst that happens? Somebody thinks that you're kind of eccentric, you know, but you take a stand, against like a more hotly charged political issue, the genocide in Gaza, the way that trans Americans are being treated right now, immigration detention centers. Okay, then all of a sudden you have enemies and you stand to lose social status, you stand to lose money. And these people are just like, as in like the EA people, like they're so kind of obsessed with being apolitical in this way that I think is just cowardice.
The other thing I'd say about this is one of their responses would be, well, when we are trying to calculate our impact, we're going to look for niche areas that are neglected, right? Because if there's an issue that is neglected, then there's a greater chance that us doing something could make a positive impact, right? So some of them would say, oh yeah, the reason we don't like, there's no like EA charity focused on like the situation with trans people in the US is because that's not a neglected topic. And I think the problem with this is that there are, I mean, I mentioned thresholds before. There may be social thresholds such that the less neglected a topic is, the more resources we should pour into it, right? So like climate change would be an example. A lot of people at EA are like not that concerned about climate change, right? Especially people like at the top, because it's not leaders of the community, because it's not existential risk and so on. But they'll say like, yeah, climate change is bad, but it's not a neglected topic, and therefore it should be very low on our priority list. And they don't seem to realize that maybe if you have like 1 million people protesting in the street, maybe that is enough to get politicians to pay attention to climate change, but it's not enough to tip them towards actually doing something about climate change. If you had 2 million people, though, then perhaps you could actually tip them to be proactive about passing climate mitigation legislation. And so this is, I think, so here their response to what you're saying is, well, we're looking for neglected topics. My response to their response is sometimes neglectedness is not a good metric.
Yeah, sometimes it's neglected because it's not that important.
Yeah, and sometimes the fact that there's a lot of people engaging in certain kind of activism is even more reason to join into the activism. You'll see like, oh, well, there's 1 million people in the street. It's not neglected. I'm going to go work on something else. No. Actually, if we had like 10 million people in the street, then maybe that is what we need to actually avoid catastrophic climate change.
Or even if the people who are accruing this money with the ostensible idea of deploying it for the good of humankind, if they deployed their money in ways that were consistent with the values of saving the climate and climate preservation, then maybe that is aligned with the interests of the 1 million people that are in the streets, right? You know what I mean? So it's like you have a chance to be in alignment with a mass global movement, and instead, and not just philosophically, but financially, like put your money where your mouth is. And then it's one of those things where, again, they have the privilege of going like, oh, this isn't really like top of the list for us. We're looking for, maybe there's some like ants that have headaches, and there's so many ants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ants that have headaches. I love it. We do have to wrap up. Any like last like super funny thing that we need to know about shrimp welfare, Emil?
No, I don't think so. Sorry, I'm a little distracted by this brilliant idea that Josh just mentioned, the ant headache project that we could perhaps get like a. The Shrimp Welfare Project, I think, got something like 2 million from Open Philanthropy,
Yeah.
Wow.
which is like the big EA funding organization, gets a lot of its money from Dustin Moskovitz, the co-founder of Facebook. So I don't know. I'm curious to talk more off screen about.
Yeah, we'll talk about
potential
the
here.
As a
headache
men's
project.
rights activist incel, I think the lady ants are just saying that they have headaches because they're not up for putting out.
Yeah. Well, we've got to get a SlutCon for ants.
SlutCon for ants, yeah, and a SlutCon for shrimp and for uncles, and I don't know, but all right, you guys, this has been a very fun episode. And Josh, where can our listeners find you?
You can find my special, Positive Reinforcement, on YouTube. I have a newsletter that I write every Monday. It's called That's Marvelous. You can get it. That's Marvelous newsletter. That's got a lot of my tour dates. I'm going to be through the end of the year, Minneapolis, New Orleans, October 24th to 25th, Minneapolis, November 23rd, and then Seattle and Portland at the end of December. Those tickets will be on sale soon.
Awesome.
Portland.
Thank you so much for coming,
yeah.
for
Be
coming
careful
on the
there.
show.
I know.
Yeah, there's a lot of vegans there. And yeah, I guess just in closing, if you feel very strongly about shrimp welfare, I am fully with you and just not eating
That's
shrimp
right.
at all. Let's, the vegans
Yeah.
have a lot of good points. All right, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
See you later. Bye.